Hey everyone, it's Brano, and I've recently been balancing how much my upgrades cost within my game. And it's got me to really start thinking critically about how other games balance their resources, how many resources you gain, how much you have to spend, and the differences between them. Now, I am making a Dome Keeper clone, which makes things a little bit easier for a starting point. And like Dome Keeper, I've got three resources. I've got the primary resource, which is the minerals. I've got the secondary resource, which is oil. And I've got a third resource, which is purely dedicated to healing. And I've got an entire video as to why I think having a completely separate resource for healing is a really good idea. I'll link it somewhere in the description or in this video, but it basically removes negative feedback loops. Now, back on the main topic, I really think that how you design these two things greatly alters how you approach the game. And I wanted to bring up two games that are from the same company and in the same genre, but you treat them very differently, and that is StarCraft and Warcraft. So we're going to start with StarCraft, and they have minerals and they have Vespene gas. Now, minerals are used for everything. Every single thing you see within this box has a mineral cost that you need to get, but the Vespene gas is used for advanced upgrades, advanced buildings, and advanced units. So the siege tanks need Vespene gas. The science vessels need Vespene gas. The Goliaths need Vespene gas. But the Vultures don't, the SCVs don't, the command center does it, and the attachment right there doesn't either. And neither does the attachment, the turret that Atosis is not able to build. Now, the way that you gather these resources is via nodes. And the way StarCraft works is that you can only have one worker gathering a node at a time, but there is a gap between them returning the resource. And what this ends up being is that you can have efficiently 2 workers per mineral patch and 3 workers per Vespene geyser. And in addition, the Vespene gas is actually tiered off. You have to spend minerals to place a building on a Vespene geyser in order to mine it. So it really is sort of the special secondary resource that allows you to get to the next tier of content within the game. So if we go into a factory, you will see that we've got vultures. They don't cost gas, so you can build as many of these as you want with just minerals. But a siege tank, that's 150 minerals and 100 Vespene gas. That's pretty expensive. And then you've got a Goliath, which is 100 minerals for 50 gas. Now, when you consider how efficiently you can mine this, what you typically get is about 3.5 minerals per gas mined. So that's at like reasonably full capacity. So you're going to have 1 gas for every 3.5 minerals. And so this can create sort of interesting dynamics within your game. So for another race in StarCraft, the Protoss, you can build Dragoons for 2.5 minerals for every 1 gas. And this is a pretty balanced unit overall in terms of cost. But with Zealots, they only cost minerals. And for really high-tech units like the High Templar, that is 50 gas for 100, well, that's 50 minerals for 150 gas. So that's really gas expensive. And so with some of the decisions that can happen is that maybe you want to build 4 Dragoons, or alternatively, you want an upgrade. And so you'll start learning Psionic Storm for the High Templar, and you'll have enough resources to build 3 Zealots. Now, An additional thing that I find really cool about StarCraft is that once you have researched all the upgrades that you want to research, because the upgrades are typically one mineral to one gas, so they're typically quite gas expensive. But once you have upgraded everything you want, you have so much more gas for the higher tier units. And so once you've unlocked anything, you kind of get this brand new tier of how you can compose your army just for the fact that you have significantly more gas to play around. Now, you do have to balance things out still, and I find that this balancing act is actually quite a good system. And it's all tied to the fact that the resource that you can gather, it's all throttled. It's all throttled to be a certain amount. The cost of units is balanced around that throttle, and you can get really interesting army dynamics from that. Now, if we compare this to Warcraft, which also has a primary resource, which is gold, and a secondary resource, which is wood. Now, the primary resource is received from the mine, and you can have 5 workers at a mine at a time, and so it's throttled. Also, there is only 1 mine per base, and in Warcraft 3, it's quite a lot of effort to expand. You compare this with wood, where you can have multiple workers on the same tree, but also there's so many trees, there's so much wood that you can get. And so the primary resource is throttled, but wood is basically based on how many workers you have. So it's very easy to get a lot of wood, but it's much harder to get a lot of gold. And the thing you gotta understand is that everything needs gold, but only some things need wood. And the buildings themselves need a lot more gold than wood. And then we get into another interesting thing, which is the units. Now, I've chosen the Rifleman because I think it's the equivalent to the Dragoon, which I would say is a balanced cost unit. And that is 205 gold for 30 wood. So that's a 6.8 gold to 1 wood ratio. Now, the upgrades that you can get are still very 1-to-1. And what I tend to find is that when I'm just starting the game, I need wood. And I really want to get a lot of wood fast because I want to get my upgrades, I want to tech up, and I want to just get into the later stages of the game. But once I get all of this, I don't have a lot to spend my wood on because this unit, this Rifleman, I gained 6.8, it's a pretty high ratio towards gold. And I'm not going to be able to spend all the wood I'm gathering with the workers I've made by just making Riflemen. And I think the most expensive gold to wood unit is like a 4 gold to 1 wood ratio. So it's really hard to spend your wood. And so I find it very off-putting that I have a gameplay loop that really incentivizes me to get wood quickly early in the game, and I'm getting this feedback loop of the more wood I get, the more faster I can tech up, and I'm feeling good. But once I've got everything, because there's just a sheer abundance of wood, I don't have anything to really spend it on, and I don't think that is particularly fun in my opinion. It's a real noob trap, and if you're like Grubby, you're used to these things and you know exactly how many workers you need to get wood, and once you know it, you're fine. But I don't like this system because I can't feel this out by myself. So I've graphed this out on kind of what the outcomes are, and the first quadrant is when both the primary resource is abundant and the secondary resource is abundant, and the outcome is basically spend. Just spend your cash. Don't care about anything. Just spend what you got. Have fun. And as long as you have something to spend it on, this can work as a system. It's not strategic, but it is actually can be quite fun with dopamine and stuff. If you don't have anything to spend it on, then the resources don't matter, and who the hell cares about this? The system falls in on itself. Now, if you're like Warcraft, you are going to have a scarce primary resource and an abundant secondary resource. And the downside of this is that the secondary resource stops mattering eventually. Eventually, you'll get enough of the secondary resource to where you will never care about getting more of it at any point in the game. Now, if you got a bit more of a StarCraft system where the primary resource is scarce and the secondary resource is scarce, you have a game where a lot of what you're thinking about is, how do I balance these two resources so that I can spend them appropriately? Now, the fourth one is what I want to get into, which is the primary resource being abundant and the secondary resource being scarce. And I believe that with this situation, so long as you have something worthwhile to spend the primary resource on, this creates a system where you need to pick what you spend your secondary resource on carefully. And in my case, it is upgrades. So in my game, I've got all of these upgrades, and starting at the top, I've got a lot of the base upgrades where if you want to improve your mining, that is just minerals. All the time, this is just minerals. No oil needed whatsoever. If you want to increase your damage, that's just minerals. If you want to increase your rotation speed, at the moment, this uses oil. And I am really thinking that I need to move this to just minerals, because I think, like, yeah, rotation speed, oil, but I think from a gameplay mechanic, it's good to just have a solid base upgrades that just require minerals. Now, I have a bunch of tools within the game that you can get. So if I get one of these computer chips, I'll be able to pick a new upgrade, and that will give me a new upgrade path. So in this case, I just got the magnet, and that will unlock a new upgrade path. And you'll see right here, a lot of these don't actually cost that much minerals, but you get a lot more minerals than you do oil within my game. And so what you tend to find is, like, okay, I can maybe max something out at some point. Like, for example, with the bomb, you can increase this bomb by, like, you can basically double the radius. You can turn this bomb into something that eventually nukes the entire screen, but you are going to require, 13 oil to allow that to happen. And you can also make it so that there's nested bombs. Or alternatively, what you could do is just say, you know what, I want to have a lot of mid-level strength gadgets. So at the moment, these are pretty weak gadgets where with the bomb, you can just throw it and it's not going to be that big. But if we were to upgrade it, we could turn this into something that just nukes the entire screen. And I think that by limiting oil to maybe I'm going for like a 5-to-1 or 6-to-1 ratio of mineral to oil, I'm going to make it so that you have to, despite the upgrades that you get and the gadgets that you get to more efficiently play Surface Breaker, you're going to have to make a choice as to what you max out. If you choose the light, for example, at the moment it starts off as a pretty weak visibility tool, but you can increase this by an absolute ton. Or alternatively, you can basically give yourself additional sight for the 90 seconds, for almost the entire round. And so maybe you don't need this. And with the bomb, the nesting bomb upgrade isn't really good unless you also get the larger explosions. So you kind of have to go, do I want just a tool that is really good for breaking hard blocks, like hard blocks to break, like rocks and stuff that, you know, take forever for me to just mine? Or do I want to create a nuke? Alternatively, with the magnet, it's like maybe I want to invest in magnet speed. And if I invest in magnet speed and magnet width, I may be able to completely like save myself on resources for like, I may not have to spend that much on my carry capacity, and then I can more quickly upgrade my damage for my cannon. I can increase my default mining rate. I can increase my speed. So these are the situations that I want to create. And when I play Dome Keeper, what I tend to find is that I'm either in StarCraft mode, where I have a balancing act, where I have always a choice between using my oil and my minerals, and I kind of have to balance the two to make sure that I'm spending both of them efficiently. Or alternatively, I have so much of the secondary resource, it's not oil, it's water. I have so much water that I can't spend. And it's just like, God, I don't care about water. I'm just going to skip that node. And the secondary resource, I find, when the secondary resource feels like you have an abundance of it, it's so much less fun than when it's scarce and it's special. And because I want these upgrades to really feel like, yes, I got the final tier. This is awesome. But, yeah. So, that is what I am going to do. And that's why I think that, like, this design harmony between primary resource and a secondary resource makes sense. Of basically, you have an abundance resource and you have a scarce resource, and that the secondary resource being the scarce resource, it just creates a much better gameplay flow. Now, if you want my opinions on other cases where I think design harmony between two things was broken, you can watch my Bad Balance Breaks Design video on the side or in the description. Have a good one, guys. Bye.